Hey, it's Mazzy. Welcome back. I'm a first generation Doors fan, and one of the biggest disappointments in my life. The Doors are one of three artists, musical artists I never saw live. Jimi Hendrix was the other, and I'm blanking out right now on the third. But I'm here to showcase the Doors Rhino High Fidelity All Analog box from their High Fidelity series. This is limited to 3,000 numbered box sets, but these are sold out as of this recording, I think, except for Canada Rhino. So if you want it, get up there or wait. I'm going to do a little bit of a shootout. I do these very rarely, but I thought, people want to know what this sounds like, even though they can't buy it right now. And I'm doing it a little differently. Instead of going through everything and trying to remember, and I don't really take notes. I'm improvisational, as you can probably tell from my presentations here. And I decided to do one album and then one other version of that album, take a break, come down here and tell you my take on it instead of writing notes. And it's fresh in my mind. And I started out with the second album, but let me first give you just a little bit of a showcase of this. I really like, I didn't think I was going to like it, but I really like this green leatherette snakeskin type of design box. Now in my case, the number's on the back here. I'm number 406. Right there is the number there, 406 out of 3,000. Rhino logo there. Kind of nice. And there's a spine. Look at that. Look at that. Let's get some light, right? Shine a light. And then it has all the albums here. Obviously, one has been removed with the Obi. They're not sealed, just like the last box, just like the ZZ Top box. So very similar. It has 7 albums. These were cut by Kevin Gray. Apparently, Bruce Botnick, the original engineer, was in with Kevin during some of these cuts. I'm not sure how many. And I'm going to go through them. Now, I'm going to start out with my favorite Doors album, Strange Days. What a beautiful record this is. Cut by the master tapes by Kevin Gray, Coherent. Heavyweight gatefold. Insert with recollection of band members, personal, compiled by the Doors archivist, David Dukowski. Limited edition. Doesn't say the numbers, but we know at least the numbered edition, at least the box numbered edition is limited. And hopefully next time it'll be different. Now, this wasn't originally a gatefold. I no longer have my original stereo Doors albums. Unfortunately, in my 95 purge, I got rid of those. But I do have some original monos. I decided not to compare them to the monos. Recently, I did a shootout. Someone gifted me the first album, the ERC, which is not very good, but it was a really interesting experiment. And I did have an original mono of that. So we're kind of putting the mono stuff off today. This box set is all stereo. And that's, to me, the concept of psychedelia. And this is rock blues with psychedelic flourishes, is better in stereo. And I love these records in stereo. I grew up with them mostly in stereo. I thought the best comparison, I have 5 of Analogue Productions double 45 RPM records. Gatefold also, double 45s. Let me just give you a quick take on these both. Visually, the Rhino, again, each individual copy is numbered with the same number that's on the back of the box, which is cool. In this case, you have that beautiful classic picture of the Doors from the first album, right? That's from the photo shoot. And you have the lyrics here. In the front gatefold slot, you have the master tape. You have the name of Bruce Botnick, who engineered this, a copy of the tape. This was done in 15 IPS, Studio One at Sunset Sound in LA. And in this case, the essay and some photographs. They have their own custom label, the Rhino High Fidelity. I'm fine with that. I don't look at the label when it's playing. Now, there are some folks that get all in a pissy fit about wanting original labels. Analogue Production has done in their 45 RPMs. They use the right color, but they split it up in 45. That's not what the artist intended either. So, be consistent or not. And also you have the QRP code here, but it's the right Electra color. I get that. I don't really care. Some people do. C'est la vie. I played this entire album, and then I played parts of the Analogue Productions double 45. Now, right away, out of the box, the opening track, Strange Days, on the Rhino Hi-Fi, sounded brighter than I expected it to be. Not a lot, but slightly. Now, I have a Hagel H390 receiver amp with no tone controls. I would have clicked it up one notch, brought the bass up once or the treble down just once. It's barely like that. And I hadn't listened to the double 45 yet, but I liked Jim Morrison's vocals up there. His vocals especially were a little bright, and some of the music, but mostly only on that first track. I didn't really feel that way on the rest of the tracks on the album, and my system tends to be a little bright anyway. So I thought it was a little bright, but really clear. And things that I didn't remember hearing. Oh, the bass was tight. Side one, I played completely through. Then I went to side one of this, up the speed to 45 RPM. Right away, I thought the 45 album was darker. Jim's voice is darker, a little lower. It's not quite as bright, at least on the first track. Other tracks, they seem to be a little closer to the Kevin Gray 33 cut. I found the bass tighter, a little more apparent. This one, the Chad version, was cut by Doug Sachs years ago. That's who did this one. And the 45 does have its advantages, does have that somewhat richer bass on this album, and slightly a deeper, darker vocal of Jim Morrison on this one. I kind of like that more on this one, but it wasn't a huge difference. And if I wasn't comparing the two, I don't think I'd notice. I thought the Rhino Hi-Fi was a little more grittier in its rock and roll, or in its presentation. Going to side two, I started on the Rhino Hi-Fi, and one of my favorite songs has always been People Are Strange. It's a slight song, really, and but it's very catchy and very simple. And the bass is much more apparent on the double 45. But I like the vocals better on the Rhino Hi-Fi on that track. So I found it really interesting that I would like one track more on one version and then a different track on the other. Now, one of the heroes on this, of course, is When the Music's Over, the 11-minute song that ends side two. I think the Rhino Hi-Fi has more balls to it in terms of intensity, of artist intensity or performance intensity. But the one on the 45, double 45 version is tighter, and again, it's deeper in the bass, and the vocals are smoother, but not worse. In fact, sometimes I enjoyed the vocals more on the 45 because they were a darker Jim Morrison, and I love a darker Jim Morrison. There's no clear winner. It's a thing of preference on this album. So next we have Waiting for the Sun. I love this record too, and I've been reading comments of people saying it's not one of my favorites. It's friggin' great. The Rhino has the insert with the tape box, and of course this one has another essay in here. I haven't read all the essays yet because this is fast and I just want to listen to the music. Remember this when this was in Life magazine, that photograph with a Jefferson airplane on the cover? I love that edition. I have that. That's the new 1967, the New Rock, or what it was called. A beautiful series of photographs. But I digress here. One interesting thing about this I noticed right off the bat. Apparently in 2007, someone wrote Danger Will Robinson, We Could Be So Good Together, a song I really like. Bar 7 has an area and it says Big Stretch, Dead, underlined. Well, it seems that our good doctor, Dr. Kevin Gray, repaired that stretch because it says stretch repaired. Look at that. 6/28/2024. The Doors, Waiting for the Sun, no longer has stretch marks. Analogue Productions they don't have a normal insert like that. They have a promotional insert, which we can throw away there. We don't need that. But the inside of The Analog Productions is that. Remember, this was pretty much identical to the original version. You have that. If you're following along in order here, I mentioned that Strange Days, right away the Rhino seemed brighter. Well, this is completely the opposite. I thought that the Rhino was just spot on. Deep voice, it was a great tone. It was great throughout, consistent. I think on a couple of tracks, the Analog Productions, especially on Hello, I Love You, and even Spanish Caravan, has a slightly excessiveness of bass. Now, it was a deep bass, and usually I like a lot of bass. It's not tamed at all. It's here, but I think it's more balanced on the Rhino Hi-Fi, the Kevin Gray cut on this one. I really liked it better. I thought the Rhino Hi-Fi in this case was more consistent overall from beginning to end. I think this is, song-wise, this is good. Hello, I Love You is a great song. You know, that's the one where they stole from the Kinks, that riff. Da-da, 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 da-da. He even said that. I think Ray Manzarek or something said that one time. I like the slower kind of ballady, maybe not ballad's not the right word, and the singing and the arrangements on this album in terms of Love Street, Summer's Almost Gone, Wintertime Love, Yes, the River Flows. I mean, you started hearing a little bit of Jim Morrison, the crooner, which will come about even more dramatically on Soft Parade. 5-1. The bass, the fuzz stuff on this is really good. Now, both are great. I'm going to give this one, if again, I hate to do competition, but people want to know. And I've always said, if everything is close or near close, I prefer the 33 over a 45. I think the Kevin cut on the new Rhino Hi-Fi is better. And it's not bright like that first album. I don't know if it's subject to the recording or just a choice they made on Strange Days. That is a toss-up. It goes back and forth. This, to me, I hate to use the word winner, because if you have this, you probably don't need this. If you have this, you certainly don't need this. And remember, if they do reissue these and release these individually, this is $40 with the insert. This is $60. But 45, you know, there's people that just love that 45. I'm not going to, you know, get down on it. And I have these, and I bought these from Acoustic Sounds over the last several years, and I adore these. But I don't pull them mainly because they're 45. I don't pull them enough, I should say. One of my favorite songs on this album has always been Spanish Caravan, with that flamenco opening, that great guitar part, and then it comes in, and then the electric part comes in. I just love that. But I tell you, I liked the hi-fi version a lot better than the 45 version, because I think, to me, that middle section with the wind sounds and the noise, I don't know if that's early synthesizer they might have used then. I thought it was more surprisingly congested. I didn't like it as much on the double 45. I thought it was done a lot better on here, and I just love that. And there is that right channel thing when the guitar comes in after the flamenco thing, where you hear almost like, it sounds like maybe a keyboard harpsichord like thing that Ray's playing, I think. Tell me, you Doors freaks. I like the Doors, but I don't know all of those details about the Doors. So in this case, Waiting for the Sun is a fabulous record. I mean, look at it. It opens up Hello, I Love You on one side and Spanish Caravan on the other side. And these are 3-minute songs for the most part. One, Hello, I Love You is 2 minutes and 22 seconds. What a great pop song. These guys burn brightly, and I think this is a well balanced. So in this case, I'm giving it, if I have to compare and I have to give it, this one goes to the Rhino High Fidelity version. So apparently in mid 1968, Paul Rothschild, the producer of these Doors album, he gets on the phone and says, "We need to shake things up. Let's do some jazz. Let's bring on brass and orchestra." There's heavy brass on the Soft Parade. This came out in January 1969. A huge departure. Brass, orchestration, some really key guests brought in, which they've used before, obviously, in bass playing. I really like, I'm a fan of Harvey Brooks, the bass player. He plays, I think, bass on most of the songs, not all of them. I first got turned on to him from the album 1968 Super Session, with Al Cooper, Steve Stills, Mike Bloomfield, and especially on his bass playing on Season of the Witch. It's incredible. And he's great all over this, especially on the upbeat numbers. But when you first hear this record, and I kind of vaguely remember hearing it for the first time, this again, this is where Jim Morrison gets almost all full-on crooner. Tell all the people that you see, follow me, blah, blah, blah. I know you want to have reviews more than they are madly trying to sing Jim Morrison, but it's kind of hilarious. But I love the horns and I love the orchestration and the dynamics in that. It's actually really good. They pulled it off, I'll put it that way. And there's other musicians brought in here. There's fiddle players on Running Blue, and there is Curtis Amy, the jazz saxophone player. I didn't know who he was then. Of course, now being modest, more than modest jazz fan, I certainly know Curtis Amy's sax playing, and his playing on Touch Me, that sax solo is friggin' incredible, and it kind of closes out the last, minute of the song or so. So first, physically, this is a little interesting in terms of physicality. Here's the Rhino Hi-Fi, continues with those glossy covers like most of the Analog Productions, but for whatever reason, Analog Productions went with a slightly sort of semi-matte finish there. It's not quite as glossy. Now, that doesn't matter to me, but it's not consistent with the others. I don't know if it was a shortage of a printing paper shortage at the time. Does it matter? I don't know. I played this time the opposite. I started with the double 45 version, and I played side one. Remember, 4 sides here, and 45 RPM, 2 sides here. And of course, those great opening songs, Tell All the People and Touch Me, 2 like virtually great pop singles and really kind of intense sign. Now, the bass on this is kind of intense. I like deep bass, as I said, going back to Strange Days. The bass is very apparent on here. Drums are tight, vocals are great. I would say, it had a little bit of a politeness to it, but I think that's fine in the nature of the music on this record. Now, I think it's going to be really interesting, and I'm not the one to do this. Some other person needs to compare the Rhino Hi-Fi to the original copies. I don't have original stereos anymore, and I'm not taking that deep of a dive, but that would be interesting. I just can't imagine the originals had this much bass. Based on, I can't remember, 30 years ago, what I remember about those records, but it's amazing what they get out of all the tapes here that are 54-year-old tapes plus in some cases. It's really remarkable what Kevin did, what Doug Sachs did back with Analog Productions here. The bass is good here, but it's not as deep, it's not as flabby. That sounds bad when I'm not saying the Analog Productions is flabby, but it kind of seems to sustain more, and that might be just me being delusional and this feel of it because it's more prevalent there. I don't feel it here. It was tighter here. I love the guitar playing here. I really like when you can really hear, mostly in the right channel, Ray Manzarek's keyboard playing on one track. Now I'm forgetting which track here. It seems he's playing a celeste or a harpsichord, and I just love those little additions that I don't remember hearing quite this separation when I was growing up listening to these records. I got this record right off the bat in 1969. Of course, the gear was different. Our records weren't the same dynamics. They didn't do all the highs, lows, things were clips, and now we're really going after the tapes. And I didn't have a system as revealing as obviously what I have now. Love both versions. I think I have a slight preference again, in this case, to the Rhino. And again, being 33 for me, that makes a big difference. So if everything is equal or close to equal, I would always go for the 33. So I don't think there's that big enough difference. And I know when I played 45s compared to, I used to have that other Doors box, the 2009 box, the double 45 Analog Productions kicked ass over that 2009 box. And I didn't have any others in between that are stereo. So again, I can't compare it to those. I like when we get into Wild Child, we start side 2 on the Rhino Hi-Fi. Wild Child, And I love, the Doors getting even more bluesy than they had been. Of course, they're a blues rock band. A lot of people see them as a blues rock band, but that song really kind of gets into the blues there. I really like the beginning of side two of this record too. And I enjoy this album more this time than I have in a long time. Playing both of these, they're both extremely enjoyable, not bright at all, closer to each other than not, except for that bass part. But I love, how the Doors, they always were kind of this blues rock band at heart, uh, veering into beat poetry and other areas and jazz, obviously. And this album certainly is more jazzy than anything else. Densmore and Ray Manzarek very influenced and into jazz music too. So it was kind of nice hearing those horn solos and the brass and the orchestration, uh, the arrangements on this. I love that. But Wild Child tends to be very bluesy and very raw and kind of nasty at the beginning. And I thought that worked better on the Rhino Hi-Fi because it seemed a little grittier. To me, the Rhino Hi-Fi is that more gritty rock and roll side and blues side of the Doors, not by a lot. I mean, this isn't day and night at all, but I think that's there. And another song I really like that goes right into Running Blue, a Robbie Krieger song. And I just love that all of a sudden, from doing this jazzy and big band or crooner type things, they do this song that halfway through, Robbie Krieger actually sings. We hear his voice, I think, for the first time on a Doors album, and he gets in this kind of bluegrassy violin, running blue, out of my shoes, the running blue. It's pretty cool on here, and I just always liked that. It was kind of a break from the brooding Jim Morrison, which I love, but that was a nice kind of. I'm glad he didn't sing a whole song, like "No era mosquito." Is that him? Was that Robbie Krieger that he did after Morrison passed on? Not one of my top 3 or even 4 Doors albums, but I was surprised how much I liked it. And what's nice about it, on either copy, there's no overly bright brass. Brass can tend to be really too high and too severe on some systems and some recordings. And it was pretty nice on either of these recordings. So, it's probably a draw on this one. I think I slightly, again, prefer the Rhino Hi-Fi. And since it's 33, all day, all night, I'm going with 33. Wait. I found something else in the Rhino Hi-Fi. It was slipped in the front and I missed it. This insert. Was this in the original? It must have been because it's a lyric sheet and kind of a toned back photo array of the 4 members of the Doors. So they did include the insert. I don't think there's no insert except for the promo insert. There's the promo insert on the Acoustic Sounds reissue. Morrison Hotel, love these photographs by Henry Diltz. Still around, and if you get a chance to hear him lecture, go to his shows. This is the one that I do not have the analog production. For some reason, I never got the double 45 of this one only, so I could not do a shootout. It's excellent sounding, tight bass, not overly bright. Again, so far as I get through this, I only thought that the beginning and some of the tracks on Strange Days, which is unfortunately my favorite record, was slightly bright. And I think it's a little bit of a toss-up, but I think on that one I'll edge it because of that to the Analog Productions 45. But there was a little bit of that Jim Morrison darkness on the double 45, which I liked. But this, again, like the rest of them, has the gatefold. And in the gatefold here, there you go. Now, one side is called Hard Rock Cafe. One side is called Morrison Hotel. This is probably the straightest of their blues records. I think this, if there is a weak album in the canon in terms of when Jim Morrison was alive, this may be it. But it's still a really good record. It's again, more bluesy. I don't think the songs are as refined as on the other things, even though Jim Morrison was noted to do a lot of improvisation on some of the tracks. This one probably is the least interesting in that respect. I do like, there's the one sort of beautiful song that harks back to that early, the first couple of Doors albums, and that's Indian Summer. It's almost too short, but I love that Robbie Krieger gets into his, that Eastern kind of guitar licks, the whole drone type thing, but more on the Eastern scales, Indian scales of guitar playing that he would do early on, and Light by Fire and a bunch of the Doors songs early on when that kind of, the whole Eastern music thing was crossing over into the West there. As far as I know, though, the Doors never added a sitar like every other band in 1967 or 68. But I like this album. Now, again, they have the Obi and they have the insert tape, specifically showing this is the master tape. First generation original stereo master, as you can see there. And again, the insert with these great photographs by Henry Diltz. Waiting for the Sun. It always amazed me that the song Waiting for the Sun was never on the Waiting for the Sun album. And I'm not one, it's been years since I read the Danny Sugarman biography of the Doors, way back, like 1970s or whenever it was, 1980s. And I don't remember the genesis or the timeline of Waiting for the Sun. It was actually written around the time of that album, but I love that song on here. I think it would have been great being on that album. It's kind of like Face Dances by The Who. There's no song called Face Dances. The song Face Dances is on a Pete Townsend solo record. But this is excellent. Again, all the pressings, I didn't mention that earlier, are flat, quiet. I've had no issues so far on this. So Morrison Hotel. So let's talk about LA Woman here. Arguably the best sounding, best recorded record by the Doors. And it's a favorite to a lot of people. Not my first choice. You know how people talk about Abbey Road being the greatest sounding recorded Beatle record, and sometimes they like it for that reason. Of course, it's a fabulous record, but that's the same with the Doors. LA Woman, it's a fabulous sounding record. Now you'll notice that neither of these have the cellophane cover because they're doing a gatefold with this Stoughton type jacket, so they're not doing the cellophane cover. Find an original for that. There was in the 2009 box, they did duplicate the cellophane cover. So here is the Rhino High Fidelity, the same old Obi, which I'm not going to show you. The insert is double this time. You have the Jesus Christ on the telephone pole, which was sort of behind on the opposite side of the insert behind the cellophane, depending on how you put on the cellophane. So you get a separate, suitable for framing Jesus on the telephone pole here. You get your 4-paged insert with, again, the tape notes, the tape boxes, first generation. Look at your copy and check that out. And of course, you get the essay and some interior photographs. Now, this is interesting because of the intensity of working with the Doors, probably especially Jim Morrison, this was a little different. Paul Rothchild would leave, and Bruce Botnick, who was the engineer throughout the duration, would produce this record. And it's the most audiophile, so it's going to sound the best. Now, that's not the reason you should be making it your favorite record, in my opinion, but it is a wonderful listen, especially 2 tracks. And of course, those key tracks are LA Woman, 7 minutes, 49 seconds, and 7 minutes and 14 of Riders on the Storm. Probably their more smooth, jazzy thing with that tinkling electric piano of Ray's, but in the Storms, it's a beautiful record. Now, between the two, the Rhino Hi-Fi is a solid record, and it sounds really good. It's not overly bright. It's tight. It is so good. I played this one first, and I loved it. When I played the Double 45, the Analogue Productions, this has more meat on its bones. But I think with this one, I would give the edge to the Double 45 album because it's got balls. It's intense. It really shakes the room, and not just the bass. The intensity of this album of, especially like an LA Woman when it builds up and it gets in that beautiful rhythm of the drums. But the Kevin Gray, this is no slouch either. And if you didn't have this, this is great. As I recall, again, I don't have the original, so it'd be interesting to hear that. My guess is this is fuller than the original. Great bass, uh, solid bass, tight bass. The drumming is always good, and of course the keyboards. And I like Robbie's guitar playing on it. There's a certain dynamic of the guitar that is it kind of stands out in a really lovely way. A couple of times on the double 45, I did think, and I don't know if it's my imagination, I think maybe it was on LA Woman. At one point I thought Jim Morrison's voice was more recessed. That just could be imagination of playing Doors records all day, and I liked it a little better on the Rhino 33, but I think all in all, this is the better listen. But again, is it worth it if you're not a fan of double 45? I don't think so, but it is excellent. Both records are excellent. This is probably the more audiophile of the two, although so is the Rhino Hi-Fi. The Doug sax here, again, 45 really has its advantages, sound-wise, especially on a recording so well made like this record, engineered and produced by Bruce Botnick. Love this record. Well, now we're coming to the final album, which is the debut album, and we've come full circle. See what I did there? This is the end. This is the end, my friend. The end, my friend. I was a little nervous about listening to the debut album because the understanding is the original tape is trashed, is not usable. And last month, I did a whole kind of comparison with that ERC, that overpriced limited edition record that goes for $500, $600, $700 now, and the mono versions. And the mono versions aren't very good of this album. I don't care what anyone says. This is all stereo. And I'm going to do a mea culpa from the beginning of this video. You know how I said that my favorite Doors albums was Strange Days? This is my favorite Doors album now. And maybe it always has been in my imagination. There are some things on Strange Days, which is an excellent album. I mean, how can you choose your favorite child, right? But I think this is my favorite album, I think. Just every track is great. Double 45 acoustic sounds, slightly different color. I don't know if you can see it here on the channel. It doesn't really matter, you know, what colors they are. I mean, printing errors, printing different things. You know, looking back on it, I just showed Meet the Beatles. Look how many colors of the Beatles, Meet the Beatles, did they print back in 1964 and 65. But both are quality records. Of course, the double 45 from Acoustic Sounds and the new Rhino. Now, there's been a question about the tapes, and they don't specify on the Rhino Hi-Fi what these tapes are. It actually still says on the cut from original analog master tapes by Kevin Gray. Well, Little Birdie told me that it's actually a safety tape. There is a live stream coming up depending on when you watch this, I believe the first or second week of December. Go to Steve Westman's channel. I'll put a link below to that and check out the date. And they're going to have Kevin Gray, Bruce Botnick, the original engineer, and he'll probably talk about this more, and Patrick Milligan from Rhino Records, the producer, the A&R guy who kind of has been working on this hi-fi series. And I've chatted with him a couple times on videos in the past, and he'll explain more to that. So I heard it was a copy tape, basically a safety tape, which is not an issue. I mean, every time we get a tape from the UK, or we get a record from the UK, I should say, it's from a copy tape sent to America and vice versa. So I was a little nervous about this. And in this case, I played the Rhino first. And of course, one of my test things when I hear this record is Break On Through, and of course, Light My Fire, and every song, Soul Kitchen, Crystal Ship, and of course, the end, Backdoor Man. Now, this is really good. The Rhino is excellent. I was surprised how good this sounded. Enough bass on Backdoor Man, the tribal drums on that song, that again, that opens up side two, that Willie Dixon song, blues song. They do a great version of it. And I love how this kind of scream comes in of Jim Morrison on that. And I think his voice sounds excellent on this. and the tonality of his voice sounds good on this. Now, I did listen after to this, and I went back and forth on several tracks between the two. And the bass and the intensity of the double 45 is really good. I don't know what tapes they used on this, but I was disappointed in Jim Morrison's voice a little bit compared to the Rhino Hi-Fi. Especially, I thought it was congested in Break On Through, that song, especially when he gets upbeat and he starts yelling on that, break on through, break, break, break. It's much more dynamic. It's much more appealing, not toned down at all, but it just works better and sounds better to my liking on the Rhino Hi-Fi. Another song to me that I like better vocally is Light My Fire on the Rhino Hi-Fi. Sometimes that song has disappointed me over the years on album because the 45 was so jacked up, as I recall. I still have a 45, my original Electro 45 from 1967. And I always was disappointed because, 45s, they jack it up and it's loud. Of course, that was an edit, a single edit for that. But I always kind of was slightly disappointed. I think it really works well on the Rhino Hi-Fi. It's fine here, but I don't like Jim Morrison's vocal as much. The instrumentation is solid and really good on the double 45. I'm giving the edge here to the Rhino here. And the same with Break On Through. I think it gets a little more, I don't know if congested is the right word, but I just don't like Jim's vocal on it as much on the 45. It's really good on Kevin Gray's cut on the debut. 20th Century Fox, that blew me away. I always liked that song. I like that song so much more on the Rhino Hi-Fi. It seemed more natural, but not natural where it takes away from the intensity of the song and the performances on here. Yes, there's dynamics in both these. I guess these would be considered audiophile, both of them. And again, I'm not comparing to the original versions. I would say someone out there, if they can compare, find a really good Monarch pressing of the stereo. I don't have one anymore, and I would like to hear that. I think that would be really interesting and see how that compares, because I'm sure it's going to be different. My guess is the bass is going to be tamer and maybe cut a little bit. I don't know. Let me know. Someone else will let us know as we see it. Again, going into what's nice about the double 45, the Analogue Productions, the end has its own side. It's all alone on that side. And it's really nice here, but I'm still giving it to the Rhino, and a lot has to do with the 33 is just a more enjoyable play. Playing an entire side, playing side one of this record with Break On Through, Soul Kitchen, Crystal Ship, 20th Century Fox, and that great Bertolt Brecht, Kurt Weill song, Alabama song. I didn't know who those guys were back when this album came out. But again, like other things, it turned me into German expressionist theater music from the 1920s, teens, whenever that music was written. That's what's great about rock and roll around this period. It turned me on to music that I would otherwise not know. Now, in this case, I don't know. This must be a copy of the Safety Master. Doesn't really say, I don't think. I don't really see it here, but has details here. Look it on your copy or freeze frame this and look it up here. That doesn't look like an original box. You have that great photograph, which they used on the second album, the same photograph, right? And of course, the whole essay with interviews from Paul Rothschild talking about the first album, old interviews, obviously, because he's no longer with it. And the insert, remember, this was not a gatefold. The first two albums originally were not gatefold, and they became gatefolds by both Rhino and Analogue Productions. So you have a photo array here. So in closing, let me say this Rhino box is fantastic. I suggest as soon as those individuals come out, which I assume they will be, buy the ones you want, the ones you're into. If it was me, I would buy the first two. I'd buy the first three plus LA Woman. That's 4. Then you might as well buy the other 2. You might as well buy them all. But whatever you like, check them out. And let me say this right at the end. I bought this copy. This was not a promo. It was not sent to me. I like this band, and I support these kind of releases if it's an artist I like. I bought some of them. I have gotten some promos, and I've told you when I do these video reviews, when I get a promo copy, it shouldn't matter, but people want to know. But this is my take. This is an excellent box. And again, I have to think now if I want to trade off my 45 copies. I would say if I keep any of them, I'll keep the second album, Strange Days, because I think that is the one that I'm slightly disappointed with the Rhino, and I want to listen to it again and take more time with it. But to me, it seemed brighter than I really wanted to be, and brighter than all the other records, which really surprised me. That opening track especially, Strange Days, it was a little brighter than the 45, and I like that deepness of Jim Morrison's voice on the 45 Analogue Productions. But aside from that, I'm giving the nod to the box, and I think overall, being 33, that is a big thing for me in my collection, and putting on a record and just enjoying the 20 minutes or whatever it is, or 18 minutes of music by the Doors. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Put your comments below. Let me know what you think, if you have this box and if you've compared it, or just what you think about it. You don't have to shoot things out, but people want to know about this kind of stuff. And it's kind of too late to buy the box, but you can certainly, hopefully, can buy the single individual titles if and when they roll out. So thanks for watching. Mazzy loves you.